I'm Pat Dooris. Welcome to The Story and happy Juneteenth. I hope you enjoyed this day and had a nice time. We'll dig into the history of this holiday in just a little bit, but first let's talk about money and priorities for Oregon's most populated county, Multnomah County. I recently got the chance to talk one-on-one with the new county chair, and that's our big story tonight. You should care about the priorities of Jessica Vega Pederson, even if you do not live in Multnomah County. As the board chair of the County Commission, she is in a powerful position to influence policy, set agendas, and set budgets. Multnomah County has an outsized influence on the rest of Oregon and Southwest Washington because of its population, about 803,000 people, and its economic power. The county recently passed its first budget under Vega Pederson. It's big, $3.5 billion. I had a chance to sit down and talk one-on-one with the new chair about the budget and our homeless problem. I don't cover the county all that much, and I learned something right off the bat. She explained to me that the county and the city have split the workload on community issues. She says the county provides a lot of the social safety net. The city of Portland handles things like economic development and water and sewer systems. In 33 years, I'd never heard it explained that way. So that's why the county is immersed in so many social services, from the health department to the Joint Office of Homeless Services and more. And speaking of that office, the Joint Office this year will have a budget of $280 million. That is a lot of money. And over the last 7 years, taxpayers have spent more than $1 billion through that office on the homeless issue. And it seems things are as bad as ever. And that seems like a good place to start our discussion. What are you going to do to solve our homeless issue?
I think the most important thing with the homeless crisis that we have right now is to make sure that we are all working together and we are working with all cylinders firing in order to address this issue, right? And I will say that I don't believe that that is something that's been happening before. And so when I came in here as the new chair, it was important to me that we do have that partnership, we do have the collaboration, within the county as we're functioning as like a one county, as we're talking to the city and really engaging with them in terms of how we need to be working together to solve this problem. And that goes similarly with our other Multnomah County cities, with Metro and with the state as well. So I think that is the priority that I had coming in, and that's what you see reflected in the budget and the decisions that we made there.
And $265 million, I think, going to the Joint Office of Homeless.
Yeah, there's $280 million that goes to the homeless, to the Joint Office of Homeless Services. And that is made up of dollars from county general funds, city general funds, the supportive housing services measure. We have some state funds that are in there. So it's a real combination of all of those things. So I think our task in front of us this year is to make sure that we are investing in the right programs, the right infrastructure, the right investments in our providers to get those dollars out into the community, helping the people who need it the most.
Is there anything that will be different this year that will be more effective? Because we're spending all this money and we still see the problem grow.
We have all this money. I think we need to do a better job of actually spending it. And I think we need to be investing it wisely in the places where we know it can make the biggest difference. So I think in talking with providers, they've really highlighted strongly that we need to have more investment in wages for the people who are doing this frontline work. And that's absolutely true. And so we've made that commitment in my budget. We're also looking at some of the underspent supportive housing service measure dollars and how we can adjust that and work with some of our philanthropic partners to get that set of money out the door to help providers, and they could use it for wages, they could use it for technical assistance, they could use it for benefits, but really to make sure that we are looking at that obstacle.
Okay, but I can just hear some viewers screaming at their TV right now saying the money is for the people who are on the streets to get them off the streets, that it's not for the homeless industrial complex.
Oh, well, people who are living unsheltered outside, who are experiencing, incredibly tough conditions, who are oftentimes have substance use disorder or mental health issues, right? They need that help getting connected to services. They need that help getting connected to housing. And that's exactly what our providers are out there doing. But it's hard. It's been really hard to staff up, just like we talked about, challenges in our health field. It's the same thing. When somebody can get a warehouse job at Amazon and make more money than they can doing outreach to people who are living outside, that's a problem. So we want to make sure that we're valuing the work that's happening.
The chair, by the way, set aside $1.5 million in the new budget. It's intended to go to nonprofits so they can pay their outreach workers more. I asked how much the workers are now earning on average, and I was told by the county they don't have those numbers, which then made me wonder how they know they need to be paid more if they don't know how much they're currently paid. A spokesperson said a 3% cost of living increase was applied to each contract to cover wages and the increased costs of doing business under high inflation. And then I was curious about that Amazon comparison. So I checked online and found this from ZipRecruiter as of June 12th of this year. The average pay in Portland for an Amazon warehouse job is $18.21 an hour. Another posting on ZipRecruiter shows the Salvation Army is offering $25 an hour for homeless outreach. Catholic Charities paying $19 an hour for outreach. And the Portland Rescue Mission is offering $20.50 to start as an outreach worker. So, saying that starting at Amazon in the warehouse, you can make more than an outreach worker, it's a great line, but it's a bit of a stretch. At the same time, the Portland Business Alliance did send a letter recently to the chairs of Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties declaring that low wages for nonprofit workers is a big problem and that it's slowing the work on the homeless front. So there's that. It was signed by 64 different organizations. Now, while we're talking about homelessness, I asked about the criticism from board member Sharon Myron, who ran against Vega Pederson for board chair and lost. Myron told me that there is no overall plan for attacking homelessness, little accountability, and little coordination. The new chair said there is indeed a plan, and she's working to make it better.
This was a huge priority for me. So one of the things that I did in coming in, and this was also in response to just recognizing that there was serious underspending that was happening in terms of getting these dollars out the door, was to engage for the joint office with some national leaders and looking at systems to come in and look at how are things set up internally at the joint office, how are things set up with our relationship with the partners and the work that's happening outside, and come up within 90 days for a plan of action that really provides all those details. So we have engaged with James Schroeder and Healthcare Management Associates to do this work. They've already started on the first phase where they're talking to folks in the joint office and our provider community to really get that feedback. And then, like I said, in 90 days, they're going to come up with that plan of action to really what we need to be doing to reduce these obstacles, to set up the system that we need so that we can go forward and meet those goals that everybody wants us to and get the impacts that everybody wants to see.
Yeah. Do you think there needs to be like a homeless czar? Some person in charge of everything that can hold people accountable?
Well, that's Dan Field, right? Dan Field is now the new director of the Joint Office of Homeless Services. And really, the Joint Office was set up to be that place so that it wasn't just things that are happening in a silo, but that it could be done in cooperation and coordination with the city of Portland and their needs, as well as Multnomah County. And because now we have the dollars from the SHS measure, it's also going to be done in conjunction with Metro, right? So this is really the nexus, and his position is really the nexus of making sure that all of these investments that are taking place are being done smartly, that are being done efficiently, and that they're being done with accountability and transparency.
Okay, and I just have a simple mind, so maybe this won't even be possible, but I'm thinking, and I've heard wonderful things about him, but it's not like he can go fire somebody in the city who's not carrying out their duties, right? Or even somebody in the county or somebody in the nonprofit world. And if there was a homeless czar, as I'm imagining it in my brain, that would be somebody who could be accountable and, really enforce the accountability.
I don't know if people would say, you person over here has the right to come into my organization and fire somebody, right? Whatever. But that's why it's important to have that collaboration with our partners, right? So, and I will say that Dan Field, reports to me, but his hiring was done in partnership with Mayor Wheeler. We just had a meeting this Monday with me and the mayor, and talking to Dan. So we're doing a lot of things in partnership around that because we know people need to be accountable. We know we need to have the city performing in, developing the housing that we need and building those the housing so that we can use the long-term rental assistance to get people stabilized into housing, right? We need to be working together on all of these things. So that partnership and that kind of work is happening. Thanks to Jessica Vega Pederson for taking the time to sit down with me. I enjoyed our conversation.
So what do you think about the county chair's thoughts on what's ahead here in Multnomah County? Send us an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Coming up next on The Story, a Multnomah County jury found that Pacific Power was at fault for some of the 2020 Labor Day wildfires, and so far the company has to pay $90 million in damages. But that number could rise into the billions. But who actually gets most of that money? And will the utility try to pass those damage costs on to customers? They've opened the door to that possibility. Details when The Story returns. Moving on now to that huge verdict against Pacific Power for their role in the fires over the 2020 Labor Day weekend. You may have heard the jury ruled against the company and awarded $73 million to the 17 plaintiffs in the class action lawsuit. The $73 million covered the value of the property lost, along with pain and suffering experienced by the folks who sued. On top of that, the jury last week awarded another $18 million in punitive damages against Pacific Power. And that could all just be the beginning. The jury also found that damages should be awarded to a larger class, meaning a bigger group of people. That could include thousands of other wildfire survivors, and that could push the total damages into the billions of dollars. Here's some quick background. The verdict followed a 7-week trial. Plaintiffs sued Pacific Power, arguing they should be held accountable for starting several wildfires during the 2020 Labor Day fires that damaged or destroyed their properties. Pacific Power did not turn off the electricity running through their power lines, and the jury found them at fault. The fires were part of several others that combined created one of the worst natural disasters in Oregon history. And here's an interesting twist in all this. The people involved will likely keep little, if any, of those punitive damages awarded. Now, that's not the actual damages or the pain and suffering. Those are protected. But the punitive damages awarded against the company to punish the company, that's a whole different story. So who gets it? Well, and their attorneys will get some as well. And yeah, the IRS, of course, they'll get some. Punitive damages fall under state law ORS 31.735, distribution of punitive damages. 30% is payable to the prevailing party, that's the person who wins, and then they pay their attorney out of that money. 60% is paid to the Attorney General for criminal injuries compensation account of the Justice Crime Victims Assistance section, and another 10% goes to help fund the state court system. But wait, there's more. Then the IRS gets involved. Let's say that of the 30% you get to keep, you had to give 15% to your attorney, meaning now you have 15% left for yourself. Well, the IRS says congratulations, and now that's part of your gross income for that year. That increases your taxes generally, so yes, you'll pay taxes on that punitive amount, and it may be that in the end, you don't keep a dime. One veteran lawmaker in town told me that many lawyers do not mention punitive damages during smaller civil lawsuits because they don't want the jury to think that they can give people a lot of money in punitive damages when in fact, most of it gets sucked up by the state. And if you're a Pacific Power customer, you might be worried the company will try to pass these lawsuit losses on to you. Well, naturally, the company says it's not made any decisions on how it could pay. But in a filing with the state's Public Utilities Commission, they're leaving the door open on that possibility. Pacific Corp, the parent company of Pacific Power, submitted a filing last week that asked regulators to defer the costs associated with the lawsuits until a later date. They claim it's a preventative measure for financial stability. If approved, the request would give the company the option to pass the millions of dollars in damages to consumers by raising rates. The company said that the $90 million it currently owes following the lawsuit is the result of, quote, unique and unforeseen circumstances outside the company's reasonable control. The Public Utility Commission will have to decide if Pacific Corp's request is appropriate, and if so, how much money would be allowed to be passed on to customers to pay. A spokesperson for the commission said next steps for the filing have not been determined, and it could take months, maybe even years, to make a decision because the full scope of what Pacific Corp may have to pay in relation to the class action lawsuits, well, that's still not known. Remember, they're on the hook for $90 million right now, but as more people affected by those fires come forward, the damages could go into the billions. Bob Jenks, the executive director of the Oregon Citizens Utility Board, is pushing that state commission to reject the request, sparing customers from having to pick up the court tab. He said, they're asking victims of wildfires to pay for the cost of their negligence. It's fundamentally not customers' responsibility to pay for reckless behavior of utilities. Courts create liability to punish and hold someone accountable. We'll see. We're going to keep you posted on what happens next with Pacific Corp's request. In the meantime, our investigation into slow ambulance response times continues tonight. We've shown you how AMR has been performing far below standards here in Multnomah County, but they've been chosen to be the ambulance provider in Washington County starting later this summer. So, should residents be concerned that delays will spread to their neck of the woods? Why the company says no, and how different staffing requirements play a role when the story returns.
Coming up at 6:30, the first nurses' strike in Portland in more than 2 decades is now underway. How long it could last and who is taking care of patients. Plus, an inside look at a unique training program, the local team that is helping prepare the next generation of combat medics. And more wild weather across our area, including more water spouts, this time on the coast. Joe has got your weather headlines, including when the sun will resurface. We hope. That's next at 6:30. Hope to see you then.
For months now, investigative reporter Evan Watson has been monitoring slow ambulance response times. Providers in both Washington and Multnomah counties often fail to get to emergencies on time. In Washington County, commissioners voted to switch ambulance providers from Metro West to American Medical Response, or AMR. At first, Metro West protested that decision, but not anymore, meaning Washington County residents will have AMR as their ambulance provider. That's going to start August 1st, if the contract gets final approval later this month. AMR is already the company operating in Multnomah County, and their service has been well below standards. There have been more than 6,000 times since January that dispatchers have not been able to assign an ambulance crew to a 911 call. Not one ambulance was available more than 6,000 times. The company blames that on a shortage of paramedics, but says in Washington County, they're not going to have that problem. Here's Evan with the story.
EMS company AMR is expected to become Washington County's new ambulance provider starting August 1st. Washington County commissioners will vote on a franchise agreement later this month.
We are bringing in clinical performance measures, so it's not solely about how fast an ambulance can get to a patient, but how well they respond to a patient.
The county shared its intent to switch from longtime provider Metro West to AMR months ago, but Metro West protested the decision. The CEO of Metro West questioned the accuracy of AMR's proposal to the county, and depending on who you ask, the dispute ended differently. A county official told KGW, "Our response to Metro West Ambulance covered their concerns. They accepted the response and dropped the protest." But a Metro West spokesperson said, Washington County denied Metro West Ambulance's protest. Now county leaders are answering questions about why AMR should expand when the company is struggling in its neighboring county.
Multnomah County requires 2 paramedics in each ambulance. We've always had 1 paramedic and then an EMT. As the second. And so that allows us greater capacity within the system.
Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Pederson told KGW that she thought about AMR's expansion into Washington County when AMR proposed changing Multnomah County's 2 paramedic per ambulance requirement.
As they were proposing having a paramedic and an EMT as kind of the base operations, we really wanted to make sure that we weren't being driven by the need to just expand capacity to a new county, but really, again, centering and holding true to those like health outcomes and the type of service that we really want people to have when they're in a really dire medical situation.
Paramedics have more training and qualifications than EMTs, and they get paid more. AMR leaders told Washington County commissioners that about 2/3 of Metro West employees have committed to switch from Metro West to AMR and keep working in the county, which helps fill their staffing needs.
Evan's with me now, and I know you've got some AMR numbers to get to, but before that, we have a question from a Washington County viewer named John.
If they cannot service Multnomah County now, how is it that they're going to service both Washington and Multnomah County, given that they can't find the paramedics they need to staff their ambulances?
Well, it certainly sounds like a legit question. So what do you think? Can they keep up?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's kind of 3 areas to talk about here. First, Washington County doesn't have the same 2 paramedic requirement for ambulance crews that Multnomah County does. So they're already hiring from a larger pool of both EMTs, who are lesser qualified and lesser trained than paramedics, and paramedics themselves. Also, Washington County here is hiring from a lot of Metro West employees, saying, hey, come work for us. You already work in the county. We can offer you the same or similar jobs depending on your level of training. So they have a bigger pool to choose from there to fill staffing, which Multnomah County doesn't have. And then lastly, AMR has already hired a lot of people, leading into good staffing numbers at the moment. They say they've had 40 paramedics hired for Washington County and 65 EMTs, with a goal of 50 paramedics and 76 EMTs total. So that means that at the rate that they're going right now, by August 1st, they expect, the company says, to be fully staffed. Metro West, I should say, still will be offering non-emergency services in the county, but AMR says in Washington County they'll be fully staffed. It's all the paramedics that they're looking for in Multnomah County that they're having issues with.
Okay, so fundamentally the answer to John's question is yes, you should be okay.
Yes, I think so, because of the numbers that AMR are reporting and the difference in requirements between the 2 counties, meaning they're not needing as many paramedics as you would need in a place like Multnomah County.
Okay, great update. Thank you, Evan Watson. Terrific stuff as always. Over the weekend and earlier today, Portlanders celebrated the Juneteenth holiday with events full of music and great food. Many in the Black community have celebrated Juneteenth for more than 100 years, commemorating the end of slavery in the United States and specifically when people learned of their freedom. So how did Juneteenth become a federal holiday? Let's take a look at how we got here.
After 4 bloody years, the Union defeated the Confederacy to win the Civil War and abolish slavery in April 1865. There were nearly 4 million slaves in the U.S. at that time. Union armies began marching through the southern states, freeing thousands of slaves each day. The news took months to reach Texas, the westernmost state in the Confederacy. On June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger and 2,000 Union troops rode into Galveston, Texas, and told slaves of their freedom. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. Granger's words spread through Texas. All at once, slaves found out the war was over and they were free. Their joyous, spontaneous celebration gave birth to Juneteenth. Juneteenth, a combination of the words June and 19th, commemorates when the last enslaved people in the South were finally set free. Many slaves were met with violence or death when they tried to leave, yet the promise of freedom extinguished fear and fueled generations of indestructible people. Former slaves gathered on Juneteenth the next year and the year after that, and over the decades, Black communities observed the holiday with festive family gatherings, colorful parades, and bountiful barbecues. Texas became the first state to make Juneteenth an official holiday in 1980. Since then, all 50 states and D.C. also recognize the holiday. In 2021, President Joe Biden signed a new law commemorating June 19th as Juneteenth National Independence Day. Juneteenth is a celebration of independence, the day all Americans were truly free.
And now you know why we all celebrate. That's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. But remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. Stick around now for the news at 6:30, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow night.